He wanted it to be able to see from the corner. Whatever mural we did, it had to wrap around the corner. So the idea he ended up settling on was what we have here is the brew making process on the lower portion of it, and then diners on the top. Now the city, to approve it, needed to have some sort of educational value to it or historical value to it. So this side is all set in colonial times, and the front of it is set in current times. Now this was just the working sketch. It wasn't exact. You can see it started out at 25 feet by 18 feet, but when we ended up doing the actual sketches, it was closer to a square. It was 18 feet by 18 feet on one side and the same on the other. You can see also on here, one of the initial ideas was to have this jagged bricks, almost like we broke the wall away. Wasn't sure if that would look good, so on this side it was nice and clean, but we ended up going with sort of the jagged bricks in the end. It was, it was kind of a neat idea, I suppose, to use the bricks that were existing there in the mural. So once we settled on the idea, the next step would have been to go and actually photograph people that would be in the mural. So what we did, and this is more of the working sketch, and I'll explain this a little bit more too. We actually met over at the Bowman Distillery. When we photographed them, what we did was actually photograph them looking up at them to get that perspective of looking up at them, like that's why you see underneath the table, underneath the chairs. Now what I got in my hand here is the working sketch for those. And what I mean by working sketch is this is a scale drawing of that. Now this was 18 feet across, and just the top portion was 6 feet high. Now if you look at this board here, there's 18 squares across and there's 6 squares down. So one of the early steps we did, and you can see it just a little bit, just really faintly on here, is the grid. So we would draw the same grid that we have here in squares, 18 feet, actually 18 feet by 18 feet, but the top portion alone was just 18 by 6. Now what we would do is at some points we'd even break it down even a little bit more, where these are 1 foot squares, but where I had a little bit more information, let's say the back of his head, or let's say the back of her head, break it down into 6-inch squares, and then where I needed even more information, because those are portraits up there, I would break it down into 3-inch squares. And we would do that with chalk, and then we could just paint right over the chalk. So that would be the first step of getting this on there, is just to chalk it on there. What we would also do is once we put the chalk on there, we'd sort of outline it in paint, because if the rain came by, it'd be gone.
Yeah.
So we'd have to move a little quick. So just getting the image on there was important. And then once we did that, we would actually get on there and start painting it.
Painting on a surface like this, what's that like?
It's not that easy, you know. Like this is unusual because this was unpainted brick to begin with. So one of the first things we actually did is came in here and we put a layer of brown paint down, almost like a paint you would use to paint your car or something like that, like just a straight oil base from the hardware store. The other challenges, of course, is all the mortar joints. It's tricky when you're trying to do a portrait to work over all those mortar joints. You just got to get used to that. And in the mural world, you're always working around something, and it could be a window or a door. In this case, it's just mortar. And we were looking at the face on the front of the building. Well, even like, let's say we look here, got a pretty small guy here, but if you count the horizontal and the vertical mortar joints, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, just in that small little space. So yeah, it's something a little tricky to deal with. You're not going to get a really incredibly detailed painting. You also need it to read from a distance, so there's a sort of a different way of painting it, really bold colors and sharp contrasts and things like that.
When you're doing this, do you step back a lot and look at it from a distance?
Yeah, you really have to. And matter of fact, we would do a lot of times I walk all the way across the street and look back. The other trick, and I don't have it here this morning, is a mirror. Actually, what you'll do is you step back and hold a mirror out and look at it in the mirror. It's a funny little artist trick, but you actually see your mistakes that way. What's really difficult is when we were up on the top part, and we're up there about 18 feet up on the scaffolding. There's a lot of energy spent just getting away from it to see it.
What do you do with like things like lights and that bracket up there?
One of the things when I first laid this out, that bracket ended up being right on that woman's face, and we had to make some decisions. And I almost painted it on there. I figured I could have painted around it. Then I decided to shift them over. And it worked out okay because that light ended up being right in between those two guys there. But what happened is it created a space on the outside here, which I needed to fix. And one of my students has a little boy, and I asked her if I could photograph him. So we added the little boy throwing an airplane down. Again, that's the mural life is you're always sort of working around stuff and having to figure things out.
Start to finish, how long has this been?
You know, I haven't figured it out, Ted. I think it's about 120 hours. It's been about 5 weeks down here painting. I started actually putting brush to the wall in the end of July, and now today's September 10th. So it's, you know, again, it's been a couple months. I like challenges. I like it when, and artists again are problem solvers, and I think when somebody approaches you with this, it's a big problem. It's like a big Rubik's cube. You got to figure out, and you know, there was times where I wasn't sure if it would even work. So that aspect of it I really like. To be honest, I don't really love being out here in the sun for, you know, 6 hours on the scaffolding, but I like the challenge of it, and that was kind of fun. Again, just sort of figuring it all out, figuring out where things are going to go. So that aspect of it I like a lot.